We are sorry. You need to pay $4.99 for this video. Well, I think you guys can tell what this video is about, speaking because of the title and that little intro, that little hook that I snuck in there for you. That's right, we are talking about Dulk, or DLC, which kind of sounds like TNT, an AC/DC song. But all joking aside, this is actually a very, very serious topic in the gaming industry. Is DLC. Are we doing it right? Are we doing it wrong? Well, I could say for the most part we're doing it wrong. Originally, I was very against DLC. I didn't like it at all. You can ask Gamer Guts on this. I was very, very against DLC. I didn't like the idea of my game not being completed upon purchase. And I am right to. I know a lot of you out there are feeling this same way about DLC. But I can tell you there are some good examples in the gaming industry. And tradition for me is we are going to start with the bad before the good, because in all honesty I don't want to make everyone depressed about the video gaming industry at the end of this video. So, what is the worst piece of DLC I have ever purchased? The Saints Row 3 DLC. Now, I got it in a pack with Saints Row 4's DLC and all of the games, which wasn't bad, but the Saints Row 3 DLC actually had some of the worst examples of DLC in existence, including the No Consequences DLC. What was this? Essentially, by doing this, you automatically get all of the choices that you had to choose in the game. And Saints Row 3 was actually really good on choice. It had some of the best choices I've ever seen. Examples of risk and reward. You take all of that out by that piece of DLC. On top of it, it had a bunch of things that almost seemed microtransaction-ish. And that's terrible, because you don't want that in your video games. So, we're going to delve into the problems here. So, for one, I'm also going to start off by saying on-disc DLC doesn't need to exist. Nintendo has proven that there is a way to do it without having to have it on the disc. By updating the game. Something that they do all the freaking time. You just put the resources in the game later to your DLC. That's what they're doing with Mario Kart as we speak. If you don't have the Mercedes-Benz DLC, it just doesn't unlock the carts. But all the data is pretty much there on your system. You just can't use it, but you can see it. So that's kind of the inevitable solution to this on-disc DLC problem. And so Street Fighter compatibility issue thing, that's bullshit. My chair just decided to recline itself. No, bad chair. So, on-disc DLC I consider to be completely useless. I don't care if you're saying it's compatibility issues. It means you created this content to cut out of the game. And so that should not exist. Also, the creation of Day 1 DLC seems to be a huge problem in my brain, because that means there is content that they created exclusively to cut money and make you pay more. And so essentially this $60 game you're purchasing can total up to $140 in DLC. Just add the DLC to the price, and that is ridiculous, especially because it's not necessary in most cases. And I have a huge problem with microtransaction-ish DLC. What is this? This is DLC like a skin, just a skin, or a special gun that is a skin of another gun, or a pink motorcycle that is just a reskin, essentially reskins to make it look like it's something new, but it's not. And these bug me because, in all honesty, this takes no skill, yet they are charging money for it. To make a skin, I can do that. I've done that. And yeah, it takes a little bit of time, but it is the shortest amount of time of any development, is making the skins. Now, I understand HD textures do take longer, but when you're essentially taking a motorcycle in Saints Row and making it pink and then saying this is $5 worth of DLC, I do not agree with that, because all you really did was recolor, and it's just so wrong in the industry. And unfortunately, it's big companies doing this. I mean, for Saints Row it was THQ, whom, rest in peace, they made some really good games, but they did have some problems. But I'm sorry, this DLC thing is just, it gets annoying. So you have Activision, EA, and Ubisoft. Ubisoft actually used to be really good at not forcing DLC. I could say that a lot of old Ubisoft games, the DLC was completely optional, and it didn't really do anything for you in the game, and I liked how they used to do it. Now it's starting to become a problem. Recently we found out that this Assassin's Creed is going to have the most DLC out of all of the Assassin's Creeds. Well, that's not exactly a good thing. It means that they're moving closer to DLC. On the flip side, though, Activision has gotten better with DLC. When map packs first were introduced, it was pretty ridiculous how much they were charging for them. Now it seems to be getting better, which is good, because God, that was a bad place to be in gaming. And EA, well, EA is EA. DLC with them has just always been bad. I think the worst example of DLC is in Mass Effect 3. They made a part of the story DLC, and if you didn't buy the DLC a year later, you couldn't get the best possible ending. So, yeah, that's a dick move, EA. Come on. And see, here's the problem, though, is these companies are essentially knowing this money goes to us, never goes to GameStop. GameStop doesn't get the money on the DLC unless you buy the season pass from them. So companies have figured out a way to bypass GameStop's resell problem, because if a person likes the game after it's been resold, then they will buy the DLC. I have done it before. And I'm happy to hand money to the developers, but I am not happy when the money I hand over to them is essentially wasted because the game was crap. And so there is a huge problem here with DLC, and it's a problem that's still trending in the wrong direction. There's still more DLC being tacked on. Xbox actually used to have a wonderful policy. Only 3 pieces of DLC per game. And I loved that policy because it limited how much these developers could do. Now, there isn't that policy, and they can go crazy on it. And that is wrong, because we're moving closer and closer to mobile games in that you have to buy everything separately. Oh, you want to ride through Cyrodiil? Then you're going to have to buy your mount, which that was a reference to ESO Online. Just note that. So there's all of these problems with DLC, but why are we constantly trending there? Well, because it gives the developers more money. Actually, not even the developers. I think it's the publishers who get more money. Developers actually get the least amount of money out of everyone, and so if they got more money, I'd be a little bit more okay with this. But there are really, really bad examples. Overpricing is a huge problem with DLC. Final Fantasy Theatrhythm, each song is close to $2. The best songs are almost $5 from what I remember. And it's not worth that. 99 cents, I would pay that. Boom, get the song. But it's not 99 cents. And so that bugs me. That just bugs me. So there's the bad. All of the bad just kind of thrown out on the table. But what can we do to fix it? Well, luckily, there are a couple companies who know how to fix it. And I'm going to call to name Bethesda Game Studios and Nintendo. Now, Bethesda Game Studios, as you know, did have that really retarded horse armor DLC in Oblivion. And although it was dumb, and the house ones were kind of dumb, except for Castle Battlehorn, and the DLC even caused bugs, some of the house ones, generally they were pretty good. The Realm of Madness DLC was amazing in Oblivion. The Knights of Nine DLC was really good in Oblivion. Some of the best pieces of DLC have come out of those games because it doesn't take away from the game, it adds on. Now, you can never say the Elder Scroll games are short. They are 100-hour games, even if you're not the heaviest gamer in the world. I have played nearly 300 hours of Oblivion and 300 hours of Skyrim in the last year. I have played a lot of these games. I know them, the maps inside and out, and I'm still discovering more and doing more. So there's a lot to these games. So they are complete games, and that brings me to my first point of what makes good DLC. The game needs to be complete. I don't care if you think it's complete. The gamers must feel like it's complete. It needs to feel like it's there. That is the big problem with games. Even if the developer's like, okay, we think we've got it good, if there's only 6 hours in the story and then 64 hours of DLC, do you see the problem here? It needs to feel complete. And that's what the Elder Scrolls games do. On top of it, your DLC needs to have value. Now, Elder Scrolls DLC can get a little pricey, but I have never felt ripped off from a piece of Elder Scrolls DLC. I talked about Oblivion, but we're going to switch into Skyrim. Skyrim had the Dragonborn DLC, which is the most expensive piece of DLC for the game. And it's actually well worth it. It allows you to go to the island of Solrum, which is a completely new area to explore and actually is reminiscent of Morrowind, which is another Elder Scrolls game. And the world is so diversely different that I actually felt going around there was like really exploring a different world. And it was easily worth the money. It was over 100 hours just exploring that place. And the story to it and the rewards for doing it are amazing. I absolutely loved that piece of DLC, and I didn't regret paying a premium price for it. I paid that one at full price. And they also have their Dawnguard DLC, which was also pretty worthwhile, and gave you some pretty cool abilities. Again, the DLC was worth the price, which is another thing that I've noticed as a problem, and they can do it right. It's not that hard to price your DLC correctly. And final note about DLC is the DLC should not overshadow the game. What do I mean by this? Well, some of the best pieces of DLC I've ever played make the game better, but they do not make the game significantly better. What do I mean? Well, in the game Sonic All-Star Racing Transformed, you can get DLC characters. I didn't mention Sega because these break the second rule that I talked about because they are a little bit too expensive. But you can add Simon from Yogscast into your game, which makes the game better, but it's not the highlight of the game. It is so much fun to drive around as Simon with his voice, but they do not make it so that the game's highlight is just Simon. In fact, I played through the whole game, then got the DLC, and I played more of the game because of it, but not as much. And so what I'm trying to say here is that DLC did it right, where the DLC isn't the highlight. It's not the real. Because all of these games that are doing it bad are day one DLC, and that is part of their hype. No. The game should be enough on its own. The DLC comes later. And now we're moving into Nintendo, who's actually been doing DLC really well. Now, they were a little rocky at first, dealing with the pricing. They were pretty new to DLC coming into this generation. And so their pricing was a little off at first, but it's definitely gone in the right direction. And Mario Kart 8 comes to mind. Now, I talked about Sonic All-Star Racing Transformed, and these are two kart racers. Mario Kart 8 felt like a pretty much perfect game without DLC. I could play hours and hours and hours of that game. I still am playing hours and hours and hours of that game without the DLC. But I pre-ordered the DLC. I'm paying $12 for 4 new cups with 4 tracks each cup. And 6 new characters. 3 of which are not in the Mario universe. And several new carts, including the coolest fucking motorcycle I have ever seen. That's all $12. That fits into the value. Now, when it comes out, I will see if it was well worth it. And then I'm going to see, does this change Mario Kart in a bad way? And if it doesn't, this would literally be the most perfect piece of DLC I've ever purchased. And it's shocking that the newcomer into the DLC market is doing it the best. Like, what? And I've heard this thrown around that Nintendo is doing DLC right. And I can believe it. Because I have never once in my entirety of playing Nintendo games said, damn, that DLC is not worth it. There was actually $40 worth of Fire Emblem DLC. $40. I was pretty much like, that's double. The game's now $80 with that. But from what I've heard, it's really, really worth it. And I just went, well, that's kind of shocking. Nintendo often releases free DLC when it's not worth it to pay for it. I mean, it's ridiculous that everyone else can't do this. It's baffling. So as always, this is just some food for thought. There is hope for the industry. I think the rest of them can look at Bethesda and Nintendo and maybe take some notes on how to do DLC. And I'm sure there are other good examples. If you can think of any, leave them in the comment section below. I will research them and maybe even have a nice conversation with you guys in the comment section. You can click the pie to go back to our channel, and you can check out our other videos. This week we had a really fun video of Mario 3D World. Gamer Guts was visiting that day, and it got pretty awesome. So I thank you guys again. Wolfie out.